My name is Bugeja, and I'm a nephrologist and the medical director of the Living Kidney Donor Program at the Ottawa Hospital and University of Ottawa. Thank you for the opportunity to present our project, Patient and Health System Outcomes of a One-Day Living Kidney Donor Evaluation Process. Living donor kidney transplantation is the best treatment of kidney failure to improve quality and length of life. The number of patients living with kidney failure has increased by 35%, while the number of living donor kidney transplants has decreased, with demand for kidneys exceeding supply. Donors find the living donor evaluation process difficult to navigate and long, on average 10 months in Canada. A lengthy donor evaluation process is associated with significant financial and emotional cost to donors, potentially reducing access to living donor transplantation. Healthcare costs can increase as intended recipients remain on dialysis longer. Dialysis is a more expensive therapy with worse quality of life and survival. An expedited one-day donor evaluation process allows candidates to be approved as kidney donors faster. This has been shown to increase living donor kidney transplantation rates and donor satisfaction in Ireland with less dialysis use. However, most Canadian donor programs have not adopted this approach, perhaps because its cost effectiveness is unknown. Our study objectives are to determine whether a one-day evaluation process is cost-effective from the healthcare and societal perspectives, and also whether it results in improved donor satisfaction when compared with the standard evaluation process. To determine costs, we have mapped out our standard donor evaluation process with our donor coordinators to determine each step and the time required to complete each step. Using this data and the existing literature, a cost-effectiveness model will be developed to compare the lifetime costs and health outcomes of the one-day process to the standard process. These health outcomes include the number of donors approved, the number of living donor kidney transplants performed, the number of transplants performed before dialysis is required for the recipient, and the number of remaining patients on dialysis. To evaluate donor satisfaction, we engage kidney donors to create a survey that will be administered to donors approved by both the one-day and standard evaluation processes. Their survey responses will be compared to determine if satisfaction is higher with the one-day process that will start in our program this year. These goals will be achieved with senior scientists in health economics and clinical transplantation research. Our study results will have direct impact on living kidney donor candidates, transplant programs, and policymakers across Canada. We will be the first to identify whether a one-day living kidney donor evaluation process results in less cost to the healthcare system and to donors and improve clinical outcomes. This can lead to widespread adoption of a one-day evaluation process, significant cost savings, and more living kidney donor transplants performed in Canada each year. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Margaret, and I donated a kidney anonymously last year at age 67. My overall experience was extremely positive, and I've been actively promoting the program ever since. One of the drawbacks is the year-long evaluation process. The Ottawa Hospital coordinators did a stellar job in planning the procedures. However, it was stressful and required considerable time investment on my part between work assignments. I firmly believe that a one-day assessment program will improve patient satisfaction, relieve anxiety and stress associated with the prolonged testing. I can see where some patients, especially non-directed donors, would drop out because of the inconvenience of the testing hurdles. For me, each phase of the testing felt like a milestone, worrying whether I passed or not. Being approved as a kidney donor within a few weeks would lead to greater donations and less attrition.
Hi, I'm Harvey Micel. I'm a two-time kidney transplant recipient, and I started the nonprofit organization, the Living Kidney Donors Network, to help patients in need have a successful living kidney transplant experience and save lives. Over the past 13 years, I've guided hundreds through the transplant process, and that experience inspired the in-person workshops and most recently, the online video series, Having Your Donor Find You. The thought of having your donor find you sounds like an unusual approach, but that's exactly what happens. There are good people that want to help. You get the word out, and your donor finds you. Many are almost paralyzed, thinking they need to ask someone to donate. But if you speak to donors, they say, "No one asked me to donate. I heard about their situation and was motivated to help them." That is the crux of this video series, to educate patients about how living transplants happen and give them the tools and confidence to develop a successful campaign. The key is to tell your story and, with the help of advocates, share their story far and wide. Organizations like UHN are using Having Your Donor Find You, as well as many nonprofits. It's been so successful in the US, we made a version in Spanish, and one with English subtitles that can be played in waiting areas and conference rooms for patients. One with French subtitles is being developed. The key now is to reach more ESRD patients and those who need a liver transplant. I have personally funded our work for over 13 years, but to reach more transplant centers and a bigger online audience, we're fundraising to hire a social media manager and someone who can help us maximize our search results to reach those searching online. Here's the trailer to Having Your Donor Find You. I know you'll find it informative and see why it's saving lives. Thank you again for your interest and consideration.
Hi, my name is Harvey Micel. I've developed this program with one goal in mind: to help you have a successful living kidney transplant experience. The good news is that you don't have to ask someone to be a donor. I know that may sound strange, but donors tell me, no one asked me to donate. I was inspired when I heard their story. It's all about your story. Over the following episodes, I'll help you build a team of advocates, I'll educate you about living donation, and I'll help you develop and share your story. Let's talk about developing your story. You've written your story, but how do you tell it in person? Using social media is a powerful way to tell your story. Being creative will greatly improve your chances of your donor finding you. Have you considered using a yard sign to tell your story? Paired exchanges have revolutionized living kidney transplant. These are critical components you'll need so your donor can find you. Commit yourself to this program. This can be a new beginning. I'm excited for you. So let's get started.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel, and as we gear up for Living Donation Week, I'm very excited to make our pitch for PRehab to prepare living liver donors for enhanced recovery, otherwise known as the PROPELLER study. And as a professor in the Faculty of Kinesiology and Phys Ed at the University of Toronto, and researcher at the University Health Network, I'm going to attempt to deliver my pitch in a 4-minute lecture. So let's get right into it. A recent article in the BMJ likened major surgery to a marathon. And it's true. In fact, our body's cardiovascular, hormonal, and neurological systems react in very similar ways under both conditions. And like marathons, our performance in surgery is optimized when we've been exercising, eating well, and are mentally prepared. So why do we prepare so well for a race, but not for surgery? Well, it turns out that we can and should train for surgery. And we call this prehabilitation. Prehab incorporates various health optimizing strategies to help you be as physically and mentally fit and resilient as you can be for the challenge of surgery. And as we stated before, the more fit you are for a challenge, the better off you'll be. Research in prehab really only started gaining interest in the early 2000s, but as you can see, in the last 5 years, there's been exponential growth in the field. And what much of this research has shown is that prehab improves physical function and psychological well-being before and after surgery. It reduces the risk of surgical complications and contributes to shorter post-operative hospital stays. However, most studies have targeted people who are less healthy or frail and who are at higher risk of poor surgical outcomes. But what about prehab for living organ donors? Living donors undergo a lot of screening and assessments to ensure they're healthy enough to donate. But that doesn't mean that the surgery for donors is easy. For some, the donation experience is very challenging. Research has shown that approximately 10 to 30% of organ donors report pain, fatigue, emotional stress, and poor physical function for 6 months or more after donation. So is being healthy enough for donation enough to prevent the very challenging surgical side effects? Would being fitter help these people manage the donation experience even better? These are very important questions because the donor is very special. The donor engages in a selfless act and puts her or himself at a significant risk and a lot of discomfort for no direct benefit to them. As such, the philosophy of care in transplantation routinely acknowledges that the donor's well-being and the prevention of any adverse consequences of donation are among the foremost priorities in transplantation. So, as we ask, is healthy enough truly enough? We may also ask, are we doing enough to protect our donors from the adverse effects of organ donation? In the PROPELLER study, we hope to start answering these questions by examining the feasibility and effects of PRehab for living liver donors. In this proof of concept study, we'll recruit 12 living liver donors from the Ajmer Transplant Center in Toronto and provide them with a PRehab program comprising individualized exercise, healthy eating and nutritional support, and psychological support and education to make sure that donors feel as fit as they possibly can before surgery. We'll measure physical function, pain, fatigue, quality of life, mental health, and the feasibility of PRehab, as well as participant satisfaction with the program. And to measure these, we'll use validated research tools at baseline, the week before surgery, and at 4 and 8 weeks after surgery. PROPELLER comprises an interprofessional team of clinicians and researchers from the University of Toronto, the Ajmer Transplant Center, and the UHN PRehab program. PROPELLER is co-led by Dr. Hance, Clarke, and myself. My name is Daniel SantaMina, and on behalf of our team, thanks for listening to our pitch for the PROPELLER study, and we look forward to getting the chance to further share our vision for this project during Living Donation Week. Bye for now.
Hi everyone, my name is Amanpreet and I'm a general surgery resident at UFT. I'm excited to present our project today titled Expanding Safe Adoption of Living Donor Liver Transplantation with Development of a Machine Learning Tool Predictive of Liver Regeneration. Living donor liver transplantation offers a huge opportunity in tackling organ shortage. Despite increase in living donor liver transplantation in North America, access to living donor liver transplantation globally remains scarce. One significant barrier to expansion of the program is lack of expertise in an appropriate donor and recipient assessment. At experienced centers, physicians have a higher level of comfort in utilizing donor and recipient factors to predict high-risk live donor transplants. Key aspect of donor-recipient pairing assessment is assessment of size and ability of liver to regenerate. Assessment of liver regeneration pre-transplant is mostly based on gestalt and a number of clinical factors. One can then imagine that prediction of liver regeneration can be very beneficial in optimizing donor-recipient pairing. Accurate liver regeneration prediction can increase access to living donor liver transplantation. Machine learning techniques have emerged as powerful tools, and we believe that it offers a precision medicine opportunity to develop an accurate liver regeneration prediction tool. With our team's established expertise in machine learning and UHN's large living liver donation program, we believe we're well suited to develop a novel liver regeneration prediction tool. We hope to study percentage of liver volume achieved by 3 months in recipients based on postoperative scans, as well as develop a machine learning tool for prediction of liver regeneration. This will be a retrospective study design, and model will be developed based on 1,000 matched donor-recipient pairs. We will integrate patient radiomic, clinical, and pathologic data, which is one of the strengths of machine learning. Based on our data, we'll gather radiomic and clinical pathologic variables. With regards to radiomic features, we will examine liver regeneration based on radiomic features that will include volumetric, shape, and texture-based features. Machine learning methods such as support vector machine will then be utilized to analyze the data. Data will be split into a training set where all the analysis will be performed, as well as a testing set where the model will be assessed. Using linear and nonlinear modeling, top features that predict liver regeneration will be selected. Ranked features such as presence of portal hypertension and donor age will be generated for each donor-recipient pair. These features will then be combined and fitted through different machine learning algorithms to develop models. We'll then evaluate these algorithms, and to decide which model will be selected, performance will be evaluated, and model with the highest area under the curve, for example, will be selected. We'll then perform validation or model with the testing data set. We believe our tool will be similar to a calculator, which will allow us to predict liver regeneration based on a combination of donor and recipient characteristics. A liver regeneration tool can be invaluable in optimizing recipient-donor matching, supporting decision-making process, and also mitigating liver transplant complications such as small for size syndrome. We believe our project is a step in reducing global as well as national inequities in living donor liver transplantation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nazia Selzer. I am a transplant pathologist and medical director of live donor liver transplant program here at Ajmera Transplant Center.
And hi, I'm Dr. Jennifer Flemming. I'm a hepatologist and clinician scientist at Queen's University.
Together, we are going to pitch on this work to you, which is titled Long-Term Outcome of Live Donor Liver Transplantation, and hope that you find it of interest. We know that for children and adults with liver failure and end-stage liver disease, living donor liver transplantation is a proven treatment option with lower waiting list mortality and morbidity, as well as similar long-term graft and patient survival. In 2020, the Live Donor Liver Transplant Program at UHN celebrated 20 years of living donation surgery with over 1,000 live donor liver transplant, live donor liver resection hepatectomy performed in our program. While we know the short-term outcome of living liver donors, the long-term outcome of these donors beyond 5 years is not well known. The objective of this study that we are pitching is to assess a long-term outcome of living liver donor post-donation in Ontario. And by outcome, we look at both medical, surgical, psychosocial, and pregnancy, maternity outcomes of these donors, and we will compare them to general population in Ontario.
So in order to do this, we are going to use the population-based administrative healthcare data sets of all residents Ontario that are housed at ICES. These databases contain information on patient demographics, healthcare utilization, and healthcare encounters from over 100 different sources. We will identify individuals who've had a live donor liver procedure from 2004 to 2016 and match them to 4 individuals from the general Ontario population in order to compare outcomes. All these individuals will be followed at least till the end of 2021, so everyone has at least 5 years of follow-up. The outcomes that we are going to look at are those most important to living liver donors, which include liver outcomes, mental health outcomes, family planning and pregnancy outcomes, healthcare costs and utilization, as well as long-term survival. We feel that the results of this study will have very important impacts for clinicians, researchers, public health officials, policymakers, and most of all, potential living liver donors who have come forward to donate a portion of their liver for a life-saving surgery to help a recipient in need of liver transplantation.
Thank you so much. And once again, we hope that you will find this work of interest.
Thank you.
Not much. Check out Medline, PubMed, whichever database you like. There's not much there. A lot. Recent developments in neuroscience further complicate these questions. While professionals have already tended to the side of caution, worrying about uncertain long-term medical and psychosocial consequences, of living donation at a young age, there have also been concerns about the decision-making capacity of young donors. A survey of transplant professionals noted concerns that young adults' decision-making may be more likely to be influenced by pressures from family and friends. Recent advances in neuroscience showing the ongoing development of the brain until age 25 further argument these concerns. I may be 18 today, but I'll be 19 in November. I've been able to make my own decisions around driving, birth control, and I'm going to vote in my first election in a few weeks. In less than 2 months, I will be of legal age for drinking. If I want to donate a kidney or part of my liver to my family, friends, or someone I've heard about anonymously through social media, I want to be fully informed about what it's like to donate as a younger person. There needs to be research that provides answers to my questions about what the donation experience has been like and how people have donated earlier in their life. We need real data and not opinions, and the Living Donor Center in the Ajmara Transplant Center at UHN is the place to give us these answers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Living Donation Week Innovation in Donation Care, Research, and Education Pitch Competition hosted by the Center for Living Organ Donation and sponsored by the Canadian Society of Transplantation and the Ajmara Transplant Center. I'm Cristina Howoron, and I'm a reporter and producer with City News in Toronto. I'm also a living donor transplant recipient. Back in June of 2018, my wonderful cousin, that's the beautiful woman in that picture that you can see there, did the unthinkable and one of the most generous things that anybody could ever do. And she gave me her kidney. So I am here today. And I also want to thank all of the fantastic nursing staff and the surgical staff and the physicians from the University Health Center who really had a role in me being very healthy today. I wouldn't be here without all of your fantastic work. I have the pleasure of moderating today's discussion, and I want to start off today by acknowledging, first off, that Toronto and the Center for Living Organ Donation at UHN are on the ancestral traditional territories of the Ojibwe, the Anishinaabeg, and in particular, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, whose territory we are gathering on. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. We also recognize the contributions Indigenous people have made in shaping and strengthening this community. And now let's meet the distinguished panel that will be judging today's live pitch competition. Dr. Cynthia Tsien is Assistant Professor, Education Director, and a member of the Liver Transplant Program at the Ajmara Transplant Center. Dr. Tsien obtained her medical degree from McGill University, where she also completed residency training in internal medicine and gastroenterology. That's a mouthful. I'm sorry if I butchered that. She did fellowships in hepatology and transplant hepatology at the University of Toronto. She did a research fellowship at the Cleveland Clinic in Nutrition and Liver Disease. She has a master's in public health from Johns Hopkins University. Dr. Tsien's research interests include complications of end-stage liver disease, such as malnutrition and loss of muscle mass, and clinical trials and decompensated cirrhosis. Thank you so much for agreeing to be part of our panel today. Next up is Dr. Aviva Goldberg. She's a pediatric transplant nephrologist and ethicist in Winnipeg, Manitoba. She's the Associate Dean Student Affairs and the Section Head of Pediatric Nephrology at the Max Rady College of Medicine. She's also the Secretary of the Canadian Society of Transplantation and chairs the Kidney Allocation Committee at Transplant Manitoba. Along with Dr. Rebecca Greenberg and Dr. David Rodriguez, she edited the first book on pediatric transplant ethics. Her work focuses on transplant ethics, medical education and support, and equity, diversity, and inclusion. Thank you so much, Dr. Goldberg, for joining us today. Dr. Anand Ghanekar is an associate professor of surgery at the University of Toronto and abdominal organ transplant surgeon at the University Health Network and Hospital for Sick Children. He's the surgical director at the UHN Kidney Transplant Program and a member of the Standards Committee of the Canadian Society of Transplantation. His clinical practice is focused on liver and kidney transplantation and living organ donation. Dr. Ghanekar also directs a research laboratory which studies liver diseases, including cancer and bile duct disorders. Thank you so much, Doctor, for agreeing to be part of our panel and for joining us today. Mary Beaucage is Anishinaabe from Nipissing First Nation outside of North Bay, Ontario. Mary has type 2 diabetes and developed end-stage kidney disease in 2013, for which she received dialysis. In March of 2015, Mary received a kidney from her cousin. Mary co-chairs several provincial and national patient councils, including the Ontario Renal Network's Patient and Family Advisory Council and the CanSolve CKD Network's Patient Governance Circle and Indigenous Peoples Engagement Research Council. She has been a keynote speaker, panel member, and presenter at provincial, national, and international nephrology conferences. Thank you so much for joining us, Mary. I'm so glad that we can be part of this together. Len Hodder, he is a non-directed living liver and kidney donor. He volunteers at Toronto General Hospital and is active in the transplant community both online and with organizations such as TAP, Transplant Ambassador Program, the High School Outreach Initiative, and CDTRP, Canadian Donation and Transplantation Research Program, and the Center for Living Organ Donation. Geez, Len, you've got a lot on your plate. Thank you so much for joining us. I also want to acknowledge the sponsors of today's competition, and that would be the Canadian Society of the Transplantation and the Ajmera Transplant Center. Now, here's our agenda for today. We'd like to make this event as interactive and as engaging as possible. Now, a reminder to those in our live stream audience, you too can ask questions of our pitch competition participants. All you have to do is go to slido.com, that's SLIDO.com, and enter the code PITCH, P-I-T-C-H. It'd be really great if you could all participate as well. Now, we have 6 teams that have been shortlisted for the live competition. They were selected following a national call for submissions. Now, to enter, teams had to submit a short video along with a 1-page description of their project. Now, I want to thank all of the organizations that helped to promote this opportunity because we really have a fantastic shortlist to share with you all today. I also want to recognize the leadership of the CST and the Ajmera Transplant Center in sponsoring the event and promoting innovation in living donation care, research, and education. $75,000 will be awarded today, and the top 3 pitches all receive $25,000 each. Now, the award winners will be selected based on 5 criteria. And it's going to be a tough one because we've seen these pitches and they are all really fantastic. Now, the first criterion is public support as measured by YouTube likes. Each team was asked to submit a short video pitch that was uploaded to the Center for Living Organ Donation's YouTube channel. And we want to thank all the teams participating in today's competition for sharing their project widely and generating interest in living organ donation. Over the past week, 6 shortlisted videos have received over 3,000 views, and that's pretty phenomenal. So kudos to you all. And now, in addition to public support, the judges are also going to be using 4 other criteria to select today's award winners, including importance. Is the topic timely? Does it address an unmet need or a gap in knowledge care and education? Is it a priority for living kidney or living liver donation or transplantation? Then they're going to look at contribution. Does the project or research advance our understanding of the topic? Is it new or innovative? Could the findings lead to significant improvements in awareness, access to services, patient care, or living donor experience? Clarity. Is the project presented in an engaging way? Is it described clearly and succinctly? And feasibility. Is the project actually doable? Are potential barriers addressed? And can it be sustained, or can others learn from it and implement it? The 6 projects we're going to be hearing about today are patient and health system outcomes of a 1-day living kidney donor evaluation process. And that's being presented by Anand Ghanekar, who is a doctor, and I'm sorry that I probably butchered her name. I apologize for that. And Margaret, who was a kidney donor. Then we're going to be looking at long-term outcomes of living donors for liver transplantation. And that's by Jennifer Flemming and Nazia Selzer. The next one, having your donor find you. This is by Harvey Micel, who's a living kidney transplant recipient. Then we've got expanding safe adoption of LDLT worldwide. The development of a machine learning tool predictive of liver regeneration. This is being presented by Dr. Barr, Dr. McIntosh, and Dr. Bat. Next up, PROPELLER, rehab to prepare living donors for living liver donors for enhanced recovery. This is being presented by Dr. SantaMina and Dr. Clarke. And last but certainly not least, recovery, young adults as living donors. What do we know about the experience of younger donors? What do we need to find out? This is being presented by Dr. Abby and Mr. Gross. Each team is only going to have 10 minutes. That's 2 minutes for an elevator pitch, and the remaining 8 minutes for questions and answers from the panel or questions submitted by you, our live audience. Now, as a reminder, is that if you want to submit your questions, or even if you just have comments, please do so. Just go to Slido, that's SLIDO.com, and use the word pitch, PITCH. Paula Neves, the lead center for the Center of Living Organ Donation, will be our timekeeper and scorekeeper. Let's invite our first team to present. A reminder that you can submit your questions at slido.com using the code PITCH.
Live donor kidney transplantation is the best treatment of kidney failure, but the demand for kidneys greatly exceeds supply. We need effective ways to increase live donor kidney transplant rates. A one-day evaluation process is innovative and allows candidates to be approved as kidney donors faster. Although shown to increase live donor transplant rates, most Canadian programs have not adopted this approach, perhaps because its cost effectiveness is unknown. Our study objectives are to determine whether a one-day evaluation process is cost-effective for patients and the healthcare system, and whether it results in higher donor satisfaction. These objectives address an unmet need, a knowledge gap, and are timely with pandemic delays. We will model costs to examine important health outcomes, including the number of donors approved and the number of live donor transplants performed. Economic modeling has the advantage of being able to simulate large patient cohorts, while it would require many years to evaluate a one-day process in a clinical trial. Our donors and recipients want change now. These goals will be achieved with kidney donors like Margaret, who helped design the satisfaction survey currently under ethics review. Most cost data has also been obtained, making this project very feasible. We will be the first to identify whether a one-day evaluation process results in less cost to donors, recipients, and the healthcare system, and improve clinical outcomes. A cost-effective evaluation process is sustainable, and we will share our model for replication. This can lead to widespread adoption of a one-day evaluation process and more live donor kidney transplants performed in Canada. Margaret? You're muted, Margaret.
This project is important to me. If donors are approved faster, donations will increase. As a donor, the 10-month evaluation is a big commitment and barrier to donate. Barrier to donate if appointments impact work, family, and other commitments. In my informal recruitment campaign, the lengthy process has been a turnoff. 10 months was a long time to worry about whether or not I was going to be improved. It impacted where and when I could work, increasing my stress. Although 100% committed, a one-day evaluation process would have made me very less anxious. A bit anxious right now.
Thank you. We welcome any questions or comments.
I don't know if we're getting any yet right now, Paula, from the Slido.
We have, I think our panelists have a question, including Dr. Tsien.
Okay, let's go with them.
Hi. Margaret, you did a great job, by the way.
Thank you.
So I just have a quick question. So I think a one-day workup sounds amazing. You know, for those live donors who maybe need like a little bit of time to think about it and, you know, make sure that they're fully on board with donating, like, do you think a one-day workup may unduly pressure some people who, you know, are not quite certain if donation is right for them or not? Do you think one day, is there like a happy medium maybe between 10 months and one day?
Sorry, Cynthia, were you addressing that to Margaret specifically, or can I chime in
Oh, no,
as well?
just in general, yes.
Okay,
For
thanks.
both of you.
Maybe I'll just start and I'll see if Margaret wants to add anything in. So that's something that we've given thought as we get ready to implement our own one-day evaluation. So what we're hoping to do is do the virtual education session that our donor coordinators provide in advance of the one day, and take that into consideration when we actually are consenting patients to participate in the one-day evaluation. And then after the one-day evaluation is complete, have a follow-up phone call with our team as well, because we know that that day will be very long and might be overwhelming for many, perhaps some or many. So we want to put those things in place before and after the actual one-day evaluation to try to help mitigate that. And we've taken some of those recommendations into account from, there's one other program that we know of that's been running this program in the province, and learning from them as well as we prepare to roll out in the next 6 weeks or so.
From a donor's perspective, I think before you get to the start of that one-day evaluation process, you have already reflected and discussed pros and cons, both maybe with your family doctor, certainly with your family. So I think I certainly was ready. I had by then no more doubts, and I just wanted to get the process started and frankly over with.
I think Dr. Goldberg has a question.
Hi, thank you for this interesting pitch. I think this was is super exciting and would be great if it can get going. You postulate that cost effectiveness is one of the reasons why more Canadian centers haven't adopted this approach, and that may well be true. But another potential barrier is that it feels like herding cats sometimes, getting different specialty services like ID and hematology to come to the donor workup all on the same day. Do you think logistically there may be concerns with how to actually make this work? And will it increase wait times for other types of patients that these specialists are seeing? Does your model account for this kind of bystander effect about that this might be cost effective and satisfactory to potential donors and to the transplant system, but may have unintended consequences for other specialty services and the patients that they're seeing?
Okay, so I'll split that into two parts. So the first piece regarding basically setting up such a program does require interdepartmental collaboration. I have to say that I've actually quite enjoyed the process thus far and have built relationships, and then a lot of other departments see this as a great way to examine quality control in their departments as well. For example, like quality control around nuclear GFR measurements. So we've had really good feedback, really good collaboration, and think that this is a win-win. So I would hope that the work and time involved in preparing that wouldn't be a barrier. The second point about impact on other patients. So we have thought about this, and as well in the discussions with the other departments, the other stakeholders, and really we're not sure that this is really a volume changing process. So what we're really doing is taking roughly 3 or 4 patients and putting them into one day a month, for example. So it doesn't change volumes, but it can enhance patient experience and actually create more efficiencies in different departments during those one-day evaluations. So, I mean, at our best estimate right now, we don't think that we're going to be taking away care from other patients, and that's certainly not what we would want to have happen, but that's something that we will be auditing along the way.
Thanks, that's great, thanks.
Thank you.
Dr. Ghanekar has a question.
Oh, hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, thank you so much for that pitch. I think it's a great initiative. I guess my question was, it sounds like you've put a tremendous amount of work and time into this already, and it's kind of well on the way. And I think that's a fantastic thing. I guess my question is, what will the funds from this particular, how will the funds from this advance? Or what will they let you do which you haven't been doing already?
Thank you for your question as well. So you're right. There's been months of preparation thus far. The fund, I'm seeking grant funding. We are seeking grant funding largely for the purposes of doing the cost of effectiveness analysis. So that's largely what the request is. So we've collected most of the cost data so far, but it's now to actually execute the model, build the model, execute the model, run various sensitivity analyses. This is what the funding is going to be used for our health economics team at the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute.
Okay, thanks. And if I could just ask one quick follow-up question, which you touched on with Dr. Goldberg, which was, what do you think the main, if there is one thing, what's been the main barrier to other centers doing this? You mentioned some of the economic factors, but are there other things that you think are more significant?
I've had some informal discussions with other donor programs. I don't want to speak emphatically for all donor programs in the country, but one concern is donor attrition, is that we have a lot of people that call in with an interest in becoming kidney donors. But anecdotally, and there is some literature, not a ton, that suggests that up to about 20 to 25% of people from the time that someone calls in actually go ahead and actually donate a kidney. So there's a lot of time and a lot of things that can go on between someone initially calling the program and expressing an interest to donating a kidney. So there's lots of factors for that. So I think that may be part of the hesitancy, is that you're going to put all this time and effort in to only have a certain percentage of people actually go forward. My response to that is that this process may actually remove certain barriers to people coming forward and may actually improve donor attrition rates, something that we would also have to test in the model. There are concerns around financial and emotional costs, and if you have a shorter process, we're hypothesizing that you're going to save time and money. And so this may actually have more people come forward as kidney donors. And also, I think you have to consider who you put in the one-day process. Is there has to be some screening and perhaps like a hierarchy of criteria that you may want to consider in terms of who you may actually want to put through a one-day process. And that will always begin with someone actually returning their health questionnaire, consenting, and then moving forward from there. So
thanks very much.
Thank you.
So what we're going to do is that if there is enough interest through the Slido app, we're going to extend everybody's Q&A to 12 minutes. That gives you another 90 seconds, probably just enough time to answer one of the many Slido questions that have come in. But could some of these tests be done ahead of time before the one-day analysis begins? For example, the submitter suggested psychosocial. Is that something that could be done online before this begins?
Yeah. So routine blood test and urine testing that would require one or perhaps at the most 2 trips to the laboratory can be done in advance, and programs can use those results as a screen to say, okay, this probably looks like you're going to go forward and be able to donate, so we'll put you through the one-day process. So in terms of the efficiency and the patient experience, that's important. The other piece that we are building in, so I alluded to doing an education session with our coordinators in advance of the one day. And the other piece that we're planning to build in is our social work visit. So in our program, everybody sees a social worker. And then we'd like to build that in advance of the one-day evaluation as well, probably on the same day as the donor coordinator education visit. And that way people can fit that in over their lunch hour if they're working, or lots of flexibility with that as well. So still making the process efficient and not having that one day again be overwhelming for people, and allow them to make a very thoughtful decision.
And I would just like to echo that I think that's really critical, maybe to have that piece for going back to that last question about, is this a rushed process and that people are not really making their informed consent? I think having that social work and even the psychiatry visit by Zoom now ahead of time for that big one-day onslaught of tests makes perfect sense from the perspective of myself as a donor.
Thank you so much, Margaret and Anne. You did a fantastic job on this pitch. There's been a lot of activity on Slido. We just don't have enough time to address all of the questions, but definitely lots of interest and a fantastic pitch. I really appreciate you joining us. We're going to head on now to pitch number 2. And that's the long-term outcomes of living donors for liver transplantation. Doctors?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. The project we are pitching, Jennifer, Flemming, and I, are about long-term outcomes of living donors post-living donation surgery. The Toronto Live Donor Liver Transplant Program has recently celebrated a milestone of 1,000 living donor surgery. It means that over the last 20 years, 1,000 healthy individuals came forward and donated altruistically a piece of their liver to save a child or an adult in need for transplant. While we know very well what's their outcome in short-term post-donation, we really don't know what happens to them at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years and beyond post-donation in terms of their physical health, their mental health, their family planning, pregnancy, etc., etc. And we have this unique advantage to have now 20 years follow-up of these donors, possibly, and compare them to a healthy individual from Ontario with the same age group. And Jennifer is going to explain to you how we are planning to do that.
Thank you, Nazia. So for people who aren't familiar, the ICES data is a large data repository that captures all the health information from all individuals in Ontario. And it's linked long-term, so you can follow individuals for 10, 15 years after donation. As an ICS scientist, we have already identified almost all 1,000 donors that have undergone transplantation in Ontario since the live donation program started. And so we're able to identify them, and then we can link to multiple different databases to talk about fertility issues, pregnancy issues, mental health, substance abuse, liver-related outcomes, and cancer-related outcomes long-term. And there's really no other data set that we're aware of, even in the world, that's able to do this. So we are going to provide very important information for donors, and we owe it to them to follow up on their outcomes to ensure that people are making informed decisions when they're coming forward for a live donation.
And we're going to ask some questions now. And I'm looking at my panelists, and I see that Mr. Len Hodder. The floor is yours.
The floor is mine. Yeah, you know what? This is a great thing to study, I believe. I'm a living liver donor, so obviously there's value in me understanding what long-term results are all about. So I'm just wondering, can you give a bit of context? Can you give some specific examples of what you think you might find? What types of things might change as a result of whatever you're going to find?
Thanks, Len. I think some things that we are interested in that have not yet been described would be, do individuals who donate part of their liver actually end up getting liver disease down the road? And do people end up getting cirrhosis themselves? Do they end up getting viral hepatitis? Do they get fatty liver disease? And are they at risk for any adverse liver outcomes themselves? That is not very clear long-term. So we would be able to do that with the ICS data. From my experience using the data, I look at all of these outcomes for multiple different projects. So the data is all there. It just needs to be analyzed. So we are pitching that we have the ability to do this. The other thing that we would be able to do is look at issues specific to women's health, including whether or not there's an effect on fertility or pregnancy outcomes after you've been a live donor.
And to complete that, there are some retrospective, smaller, multi-center studies that have shown that there may be some outcomes effect in terms of miscarriage. And the beauty of this study and our work is that we are talking about one center, one program, and the Ontario healthcare system, which is very different. And that is important to point out.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Len. Now we're going to head over to Winnipeg and Dr. Goldberg.
Thanks. This looks like an amazing data set and an opportunity to get really rich data about living liver donors. My question was related to the psychiatric outcomes. You said in your pitch that one of the things you'll be looking at is ER visits and admissions for mental health, prescriptions for psychiatric medications. And I think that that's important because what we do know about living liver donors is that there is some higher rate of some of these issues, like Marianne Du's review in AJT in 2017 saw that depression was as high as 22% in donors. One thing I worry about though with this study design is that the positive benefits of donation may not be captured in the model that you have. So another thing that we know about living donors, liver or kidney, is that many of them experience great psychological benefit. And if you're only looking at those that present with mental health concerns, is there a risk of skewing this towards negative results when there actually might be a lot of people whose mental health benefits from the opportunity to donate?
Thank you for that question, Dr. Goldberg. It would definitely be difficult to tease out using administrative data, but one thing that we would be able to look at is whether donors coming in before donation had any mental health history, and then following them to see whether or not they have similar outcomes to individuals who also had previous mental health diagnoses, to see if there may be some sort of benefit. Do they actually have reduced contacts for mental health? Do they have reduced use of emergency room or inpatient services? It wouldn't necessarily reflect everything, but we might be able to look at that in some degree with the data given its limitations.
Awesome, thank you.
Mary Beaucage is up next. Mary, the floor is yours.
Sure. Great project. I thought the idea of long-term outcomes is really was really important, and I'm thinking about kidney as well. But even just in this, once you have all of this information, what do you plan on doing with it? Are you thinking of benefits in recruiting and sort of putting people at ease if they're considering living donation?
I'm sorry, I missed the last part of your, you get cut. Do you say, I heard the part where you say, what are you planning to do with that? And then what was the?
Yeah, I was just wondering what you're planning to do with this information. Are you looking at it to help with recruiting, to put potential living donors at ease? I'm just curious as to where you're going to take this information afterwards.
I think it's a good question. It's an important question. I think knowledge is always helpful to navigate and perhaps set up supports for these donors. If we find that maybe at 15 years, they may be at risk of developing some liver disease or some need for long-term psychiatric follow-up for those who had pre-donation issues or struggle with mental health, we will be able to provide some support and follow them and monitor them more closely.
Thanks for that question, Mary. I'll chime in as well. I think another thing that we would be able to bring to the transplant community would be, are there identifiable risks for people to have worse outcomes after live donation? And if we can identify them, can we act on them? So if we define that certain groups of individuals are at higher risk of having poor liver outcomes 10 years after donation, are those modifiable, and can we change those before transplantation?
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from our panelists? No? Okay, I'm gonna head on. I'm sorry? No, I think we're good. I'm going to head on over to Slido because the audience is very interested. This comes from Anonymous. Is one of the goals of this study to create a framework for other programs to use as a process map for implementation? That doesn't seem like this is relevant to this one.
Sounds like the last pitch.
Yes, yeah. And I'm just waiting to see if Paul has come up with if it was just an error. If not, we are very close to time. Okay, I'm going to thank both you, Dr. Flemming and Dr. Selzer, and Dr. Flemming, please give Kingston a big hug for me. I'm a Queens alum, so I do like to see people from the Kingston area. Thank you so much, and great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're going to move on now to our next pitch, which, if we're going in order, it should be having your donor find you. We are. And I believe that Harvey is on the line and ready to go.
Sorry about that. Is that okay?
That's okay. Tech problems all the time. No worries.
All right.
Harvey,
Thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation. I've been helping patients to a successful living transplant for over 10 years. In the in-person workshop I've led, it is titled Having Your Donor Find You, because after years of interviews with many donors, they say, no one asked me to donate. I heard about their situation and I wanted to help. Recipients tell me, I didn't ask anyone to donate. But the biggest concern voiced by patients for not pursuing a living donor is they don't want to ask. A study published in the medical journal Transplantation, whose authors are from McGill University, had the following as one of their conclusions. A major patient barrier is recipients' discomfort to discuss issues related to donation with potential donors. Centers suggest patients should find a living donor, but their educational programs rarely include step-by-step information on how to achieve that goal. Having your donor find you is easy to provide to patients. They can watch it on their own time and share it with their advocates. And most importantly, for a transplant center, it fills this gap of information that is so important in helping patients have a successful living kidney transplant experience. I refer to this as teaching someone to fish. I'm confident that making the program available to more patients will increase the number of living transplants and save lives. UHN patients are using Having Your Donor Find You. And if I receive additional financial support, it will allow me to reach out to other transplant centers in Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. I'm going to open it up to the floor. And I see none, but I have a couple of questions because I am familiar with your project. Oh, I'm sorry. I already started those. Sorry, doctors. I'll just be very quick. When you came up with this idea, I mean, obviously living donor processes, they change from different provinces and certainly in the States. Can you adapt this model so that it reflects the province or the state in which it's being broadcast or shared?
Yeah, it's a universal issue. It doesn't deal with any local character or any laws or requirements, okay? It is simply very narrowly focused, okay, on having your donor find you. And so it's universal. It's universal for a liver, kidney. It's universal in different countries. I have people interested in different countries looking interested in the program. So it's a universal problem that people think they need to ask someone to donate. And all this program does is it empowers someone. It tells them you don't need to ask, okay? You tell your story and you need advocates. Those are the two really overriding principles. And then it gives them ideas on how to get the word out. But those two principles are really universal.
You have a lot of questions from the panel now, so I'm going to start off with Dr. Tsien.
Hi, so that was a great presentation. Thank you. So I might have missed this, but does this sort of technique rely on, say, like social media or basically like having access to like good internet and computers? Because I do find like some of our patients, you know, they don't have, you know, smartphones or like really good internet access. I mean, is this something that every donor can do, or is there a way of like maybe helping people who don't have like are very social media savvy or anything like that?
Sure, it's not a social media problem, okay? This is just a website, it's a URL. it's UHN.havingyourdonor-find-you, for example. Okay, so it's their unique URL. The PKD Foundation in Canada, same thing, npkd.havingyourdonor-find-you. So that's going to be the most logical place or way to access the program. But we have a version that strings together or strung together all of the videos. It's under 30 minutes, and this can be played in a waiting room. It's subtitled in English right now, will be in French, or it can be in a separate conference room where you can have your patients coming in and just sit there. You can have someone from the center facilitate it and be the MC. Here's a program that'll help you. So when patients come into a center, they can watch it in a conference room.
Got a lot of questions here. We don't have enough time for everybody. So I'm going to go to Dr. Anand because we haven't heard that much from him yet.
Oh, thanks very much. Because I know I wasn't the first person to raise my hand. Thanks very much for the pitch. It's a really interesting and, I think it's a great initiative. My question is, how do people find out about your program right now? And how do they get access to the materials? Is it something that's kind of freely available to people who are interested, or is there some sort of, they have to register, or how does it work exactly? And if you were to get some support, I mean, how is that, what are you going to do with it in terms of rolling it out to other centers, or what's the logistics of it?
So it's free to patients. So UHN is, people can register or they can go straight to the program. UHN is giving anyone going to the website the choice, okay? Other organizations have people register, and if you were to register, you'd see what happens. You get an email immediately, and then you get an email in 3 days, and then I send out a once-a-month email to those who register for the two purposes. One is to keep them motivated to pursue living donation and to continually give them ideas on what they can do to refresh their campaign. So it is free to patients. There's a regular website. I encourage the transplant centers that are using it. I purchase business cards for them. So all they need to do is hand out a business card with all the information about the program with their URL to patients, and it has a description of the program on one side and their subdomain on the other. So it's an incredibly simple program to facilitate for centers or for nonprofits. I have many nonprofits that have signed up for the program also.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Beaucage, who has tons of familiarity with living donor situations. Mary?
Hi, thanks for your presentation, Howard, but I just, I really want to hone in on that adaptability to different, I know you talk about, very basic tenets of your program, but I really, to me, I'm very hyper aware of the difference between Canadian culture and American culture. So I'm really concerned, and I will go even further in terms, I'm Indigenous. So in terms of Indigenous ways of knowing, how are you going to adapt that? And how are you also going to adapt your program to people who do not have internet access? There's a lot of people in Canada that do not and can't access websites either because they don't have the equipment to do so, or the access to Wi-Fi, so or internet for that matter. What alternatives do you have, and how are you going to adapt to that?
The center can play the program. It's under 30 minutes for patients as they come in to the center for their workups. So they can place them in a conference room or set up times for them to do that. So it can be accessed while they're in the center. They can watch the program. It's also being used in conference rooms. I can't address what the Indigenous group issues might be. I don't know them, honestly. But I will tell you that one of the first organizations that signed up for the program is the PKD Foundation of Canada. Okay, they saw the benefit immediately and wanted to offer it to patients. And many people have come through their portal to watch the program. So it can be shown at transplant centers. It can't be easier for them to show them while someone is in their in their facility if they don't have
So,
access online.
so you're targeting transplant facilities. I know my own example very quickly. I am 4 hours away from my transplant center. So I didn't have readily accessible information. So there are people who are even farther away from their transplant centers and don't have internet access and can't get to their transplant centers on a regular basis. So I'm just wondering how you're going to address that.
Mary, let me make the commitment now that if this is not, if that is an issue, we can put the program on a DVD or put it on a thumb drive, which are inexpensive, and mail it out to people. I think that would be another way they can play the program in their own setting if they have a DVD player or a computer without access. So, but it is a computer-based program that is developed, but very easily to send out a DVD of the program or a CD even just for the audio of the program. That can be done also, and I would be more than willing to work with any organization to develop that.
Thank you so much, Harvey. I know I still have questions that are lingering in Slido and also even within amongst our panel, but we are at our maximum time allotted to you. So in the spirit of being fair, it's time to move on. Wonderful presentation, Harvey. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we're going to move on now to presentation number 4, which should be, there we go, we're here, expanding safe adoption of LDLT worldwide, machine learning tool predictive of liver regeneration. And joining us, I believe we have Dr. McIntosh, Dr. Bhatt, and Dr. Brar. Are all 3 of you here?
Yes. Yes.
Hi. Wonderful. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much. My name is Amanpreet. I'm a general surgery resident trainee at the University of Toronto, and I'm excited to share our project today. Is it possible to share my slides or?
No, unfortunately, we're going to ask you to just stick to the format for right now.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm excited to share our project today, which is increasing adoption of living donor liver transplantation with development of a machine learning tool predictive of liver regeneration. So one of the main barriers cited to expansion of living donor liver transplantation is often the fear of complications in recipient and donors. And one of the main barriers is often that physicians feel less comfortable with the recipient-donor assessment pairing, particularly in the high-risk live donor transplants. And a key really assessment tool that can really help in that pairing assessment would be ability to predict liver regeneration. And so far, often, this is based on a clinical gestalt based on number of recipient and donor factors. Our project, we're hoping to use novel machine learning techniques, which allow us to integrate heterogeneous and large data sets to develop a novel machine learning tool, which will allow us to predict liver regeneration. We believe that accurate and non-invasive liver regeneration prediction tool can really help increase access to living donor liver transplantation worldwide. Our project aims to study percentage of liver volume achieved by 3 months in recipients based on the postoperative CT scans. And based on our data set, and we hope to then develop the machine learning algorithm. We aim to use the UHN database, and our model will be based on 1,000 donor recipient pairs who underwent living donor liver transplantation at TGH. We hope to gather radiomic as well as clinical pathologic features. And subsequently then with machine learning methods such as support vector machine, we hope to analyze the data. The data will be split into the testing as well as the training model. And with the training data set division model, we hope to then create our model using the linear and nonlinear modeling. We hope to select the top features from radiomics and clinical pathologic variables that will be selected. The top features that predict liver regeneration will be selected out of those. And then we will use statistical measures to test different machine learning techniques to pick a model with the highest measure. For example, we'll measure the area under the curve and pick the highest model. And then that model will be validated using the testing data set. We believe that our tool can serve as a calculator, which will help us predict liver regeneration given a number of the recipient and donor characteristics. Our secondary aim is also that we will develop a reverse calculator almost, which will help us predict the most optimal donor given a set of recipient characteristics. And we really believe that this novel tool can help us predict accurately liver regeneration. And this project is a step towards global and national equity and access to liver transplantation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brar. And we immediately had a hand come up from Mr. Len Hodder. Len, the floor is yours.
Thanks. This is a really interesting thing that you're looking to do. I'm curious. You're looking to consolidate or look at 1,000 living liver donors, and I'm just questioning: is it seems like a Herculean effort to try and pull that much information together? You know, you're going to be looking at imaging data. Maybe some of that imaging data is back to 1998 and 96 when this whole program started. Is that realistic? Is it achievable?
Certainly, yeah. And Dr. Bhatt can probably maybe jump in as well. I mean, she has already developed previously a machine learning tool in liver transplantation, and perhaps she can also jump in and answer.
I realized I was muted. Thanks for that question, Len. In fact, we recently published a paper in Lancet Digital Health using data from over 4,000 liver transplant recipients in our program to predict long-term mortality secondary to cardiovascular cancer infection, as well as graft failure-related mortality. And then using that, basically we can, from a follow-up visit, we can predict the 1-year and 5-year risk of mortality due to those various complications. And we have a list of ranked features that are particularly predictive in a given patient. So similarly, I think we would be quite able to retrieve all of this data. Additionally, from the radiomics perspective, actually, Chris McIntosh, who is the co-investigator in this from the machine learning expertise standpoint, has extensive experience in radiomic analysis. And so really we're depending on him for that expertise. And then it's a question of integrating all of that clinical as well as radiologic data, which is quite feasible based on Chris's experience.
Did that address your question, Len?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Dr. Ghanekar.
Thanks. This is a really interesting project and kind of bringing a new type of technology to bear on this population. I guess my question is that, or kind of concern about the project is that, you know, in trying to predict, in looking at predicting liver regeneration in recipients of living donor transplants, I think what you're really looking for is negative outcomes, in the sense that you're trying to detect liver insufficiency or small for size syndrome, as we call it. And in the set that you're looking at, first of all, it would be restricted to adult recipients, because the pediatric recipients would be very difficult to judge because they change in size. And in the adult recipients, the outcome of interest, which is liver insufficiency, is thankfully relatively rare if you look at our own center data. So my concern is that you'll go through a huge data processing thing, but be still left with kind of a, because the outcome is infrequent, the confidence of the prediction will be low. I guess that's my technical concern, and I'm wondering.
So that actually is a very good question, Anand. And in fact, that's why we had discussions about this outcome, because clearly in our program we do such a good job of recipient selection. However, there are many centers around the world where people are not able to do such a good selection. And what we'd like to do here is really determine what it is about our program that makes it so successful at that donor recipient matching. So kind of looking in retrospect. So we realized that all of our donor recipient pairs will have achieved a certain degree of liver regeneration. So there is a certain term used for that called standard liver volume by 3 months based on the A2L study. And so what we'd like to do is look at the percentage of optimal volume achieved based on the the liver to body weight ratio, and go at it kind of retroactively and see what it is about those particular pairs that resulted in that optimal regeneration. And then from there, ultimately, I think the goal, I mean, this is a further, beyond this particular project, what we would like to do is then see what it is about those characteristics that made those pairs optimal and what would have potentially not made those pairs optimal. So like given a certain percentage of liver resected from this donor, this is what happened as the ultimate outcome. But had that been, slightly increased or decreased, we can actually, account for that with these calculators. This percentage increase versus this percentage decrease would have resulted in inadequate volume achieved by 3 months. So we can actually model that. In fact, we did this in our recent paper where we could actually, with a given degree of tacrolimus increase versus decrease, this is what would have changed with respect to the outcomes.
Okay,
but that is an excellent question. In fact, we had considerable discussion about this one because we were trying to determine what is the best way to do this, because small for size syndrome is actually, as you say, it's so rare because we do such a good job. So what is it? Can we distill the expertise from UHN and actually allow for other programs to adopt such safe practices at other centers to make them feel more comfortable about living donation?
Dr. Batt, you actually addressed one of the questions that we had coming in from Slido. I'm gonna read out one right now. This is probably our last question though. Do you have patient and family advisors working with you to develop this tool, or is this tool only for providers? If you're going to use it to show results to patients when treatment options, engaging patients and users to share this info in a patient-friendly way may help optimize the tool early on. I apologize, I'm reading it verbatim as it comes in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. In fact, I've been very fortunate to work with patient partners through the CDTRP, including Sandra Holdsworth and Elaine Young. So they've been wonderful. And I think that's a great idea. So as we develop this tool, it would be great to have that kind of feedback. I think at this point, basically, we would be developing this from the standpoint of providers, but then ultimately, in order to make patients feel safe about this as well, I think it makes sense to really involve patient voices in this project. So it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I actually learned quite a bit, having watched your video beforehand, so I really do appreciate this. And we're going to move on to our next challenger. And this team is PREHab to prepare living liver donors for enhanced recovery. And do we have Dr. Clarke and Dr. SantaMina on the line? Just going to quickly scroll through here. Oh, I see that Dr. Clarke, you are here, and Dr. SantaMina, fantastic. The floor is yours, gentlemen.
Just checking to make sure everyone can hear me okay. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes,
yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Happy Living Donation Week. Thank you to the organizers of this great initiative, and thank you to the judges and the host for sharing your time with us today. If we were in person, I'd ask you, what do you prepare for? Is it a job interview, an athletic or sport competition, an exam, or maybe a YouTube live pitch competition like the one we're in today? But the question is really, in life, what is so important that would make you want to be sure you are as prepared as possible for the best possible outcomes? And as I mentioned in my YouTube video, surgery is likened to a marathon and both require training, but few people are supported to prepare for surgery to ensure that the outcomes can be as good as possible. We refer to training for surgery as prehab, and typically it includes health optimizing behaviors like exercise, nutrition, and psychological support to maximize health prior to entering the operating room. And there's a humongous body of research supporting the benefits of prehab, including at the individual level as well as at the health system level. But prehab is typically reserved for frail or deconditioned patients who are typically at high risk for surgical complications. To date, there have been no studies examining comprehensive prehab for organ donors. And this is likely because donors are considered healthy enough for donation and are at low risk of complications. But the road isn't easy for donors, and many struggle for 6 months or more with various limitations. So is healthy really healthy enough? And it's been stated that the donor's health is top priority, but should we be doing more to ensure it goes as well as possible? And so to examine this, we proposed the PROPELLER study. And that's a single-arm proof of concept trial at UHN in Toronto that will recruit living liver donors prior to donation. We'll provide a 3-armed approach to prehab, including exercise, nutrition, and psychological support to effectively train donors for surgery so they can be as ready as possible for donation. We'll measure participants' experience in the prehab program, as well as the effect of prehab at routine time points up to 8 weeks after surgery. And so what's the bottom line? No other study has done this before. No other study has examined prehab for donors, and they do deserve the best care possible. Our team can do this with our group of experts, including patient partners at the University of Toronto and UHN. And just like a marathon, we hope that donors will have great success in their donation experience, and we certainly believe prehab helps. Thanks.
Okay, seeing no raised hands immediately, I have questions. So first off, kudos, because this does seem really important to be trying to address people's health and get them in the optimal shape or optimal health prior to transplant. I'm going to be a little bit biased here as a living donor recipient on the kidney side. Is there a way that you could expand this to include kidney patients as well, or kidney donors?
Absolutely. And this was actually a vigorous discussion that the research team had. Who would be the best group to include here? And simply from the purposes of making sure that we had a somewhat homogeneous sample so that we could explore the effects of prehab and its feasibility for donors, we thought that rather than confounded by the differences in treatment types, we would select one group. And given the nature and the extent of liver donation, it was thought that liver donors are probably the best group to start with. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we wouldn't expand. In fact, we want to expand. But for the early phase of prehabilitation research in this space, we thought that choosing one made the most sense from a research perspective.
And Daniel, maybe my 2 cents to add to that is simply that, when we look at what happens at 6 months, where are we best, given this pilot data, to see a bigger, perhaps change at that 6 month time point might be in the liver population, hence the homogeneous choice. But it was a massive discussion.
Thank you very much, doctors. I see that Dr. Goldberg coming into us hot from Winnipeg.
Thank you for this. Sounds like a really exciting study. As you said in your intro, to even be approved to be a living donor, you have to be in relatively good shape. So you're not talking about turning people from like Bruce Banner into the Hulk. Like how buff is buff enough? Like what are you going to use for your criteria of what would be reasonable prehab goals? Where are you setting the bar for these donors before they donate?
Another excellent question that we, again, had a lot of discussion about. And in fact, what is the ceiling effect that we might anticipate as a patient or as a person, a donor comes through the doors? Well, I think that we all have to maybe think about how fit we are currently and could we be fitter? I'd like to think of myself as reasonably fit, but I probably could do even better, especially if I had a challenge ahead of me, such as surgery, and especially a surgery as difficult as liver donation may be. So what is the bar? Well, I think the bar is really those people who come in, who are about to have surgery, who are not in as great shape as they should be. And that is generally the vast majority of the Canadian population. I don't think many Olympians are walking through the doors of hospitals doing a lot of things. So can we get people closer to that space where we can optimize their health? And one point I'd like to make on that was related to the discussions we had from a research perspective is that the research tools that we usually look at are based on clinical populations where the needle can change often a little bit more with a health intervention like this one. So using the similar research tools probably won't necessarily be as appropriate as the ones we would use for a donor's experience. So we have exercise physiology measures and other functional measures that would be better able to capture the movement in health and fitness in the preoperative time period. So the short answer is we would take everyone, because we do believe that virtually everyone can do better, especially with a challenge like surgery.
And if I'm just to add 2 cents to that as well, Daniel, there's the issue in terms of, sometimes if we don't look, we don't see. And, one of the things about this competition is to be innovative, and this has not been done before. We imagine that everybody does so amazingly well after, but I sit actually on the other side where I see that 5 or 10% sometimes in other areas that don't. And so you don't know if you don't look, and this is a perfect opportunity to take a look and just see how great everybody is at all times. And I know that the first presentation I gave to the 1,000, you've done 1,000 live donors at UHN. There were certainly some individuals that thought they could have had a little bit better prep or journey in that post-op phase. So,
thank you. I'm going to head on over to Dr. Tsien. Cynthia.
Hi. My question was very similar, but I was wondering if you could give more details on the nutritional aspect of this, because I find this very intriguing. What exactly would sort of the nutritional component of your program would be? Is this similar to what other people are doing, like early recovery after surgery? Like, are you going to be giving is it just like in general nutritional tips, or are you actually going to give people like certain supplements or like, timing, quality of the food and nutrients pre and post transplant? If you have any, are you able to share any details on that?
Absolutely. Thanks for that question. In the interest of time, I wasn't able to get into all of the details regarding the protocol, but we have spent quite a bit of time fleshing it out. And the protocol is built on a recently launched UHN surgical prehab program, where from a dietary perspective, patients receive an initial consult at baseline with a dietitian, as well as one prior to surgery. For the donor population, they're less likely to come in with dietary insufficiency as we may see in other populations. However, we're trying to maximize an exercise dose so that we can maximize fitness gains in a relatively short period of time. And to do that, you also need to be nutritionally optimized. So a consult with the dietitian will allow us to make sure that we have the appropriate consumption of various macronutrients to sustain that high volume of exercise, as well as supplementation if necessary. If there are deficiencies noted in a person's diet, they will also be corrected by the dietitian.
Now I'm going to go over to Dr. Ghanekar.
Thanks. This is a really interesting and novel pitch. I was really excited to see it because many donors ask me, what should I do to prepare? And I don't have an answer to them. I don't know what to tell them really, except just, take it easy for a few days. So I guess my question is, donors, because they are healthy, are pretty busy people. They've got lives and families and work, and they're not donating because they are sick and need something. They're basically taking time out of their regular busy life to do this, and obviously they want to do well. But what's the kind of time commitment for that? It's hard to tell from your proposal, but is this something that, from a feasibility perspective, like what's the time commitment involved for donors? Because a lot of them are already stressed out because they've got to take 2 months off work. They've got to get other people looking after their kids and pets and businesses and all that sort of stuff. So what's the kind of impact pre-surgery going to be of something like this?
That's a fantastic question, and I'll approach it from a few different perspectives, and I'll try to be as concise as possible. I think from a motivational standpoint, I totally appreciate that they have committed this time to donation and the surgical experience and the recovery process. Perhaps the time invested up front may shorten the duration of time where they're feeling functionally limited in the after transplant period. So yes, they are spending time up front, but could they resume some of their activities earlier with that investment of time earlier? Now, that may help incentivize participants to pre-rehabilitate. On the other hand, we try to make it as convenient as possible. So what we've learned over the last few years in delivering rehabilitation to surgical patients at UHN is that we can deliver many exercise, dietary, and psychological interventions remotely via virtual care. So where inconvenience in terms of attending an inpatient or in-center visit is problematic, we can make it work for their schedule. The actual time commitment itself probably varies with patients. I'll speak about the exercise portion in particular. We try to maximize that exercise dose, as I mentioned previously. So we use high intensity interval training, which is a fairly efficient exercise prescription 1 to 2 times per week, plus moderate intensity continuous training at home. So yes, there is an expectation or a hope that patients will come in for a fairly intensive exercise session, but we do try to work with the participants to make sure that exercise fits within their lifestyle. And saying that, I think that the time that is spent in exercise is probably something that people will understand why it's important. And I think that it is an opportunity for people to really focus in on their health from a dietary standpoint. Similarly, there are consults that would probably take 1 hour, maybe 2 times over the course of the intervention period, and similarly with psych. It probably varies from patient to patient. Exercise is definitely the heaviest time commitment, but we work with the participants to make sure that it fits their lifestyle, with the intention that hopefully it's something that they can maintain after the donation experience.
And so 2 cents, I know we're probably running short on time here. Anand, Daniel's probably one of the world leaders. I know we've got lots of world leaders at UHN in this prehabilitation space. I've watched him kind of build this on the prostate cancer side. I've seen this with actually some of his people on the neoadjuvant chemotherapy side. And it's amazing to hear these patients tell you the difference between going through a cycle of chemo and a cycle of chemo with exercise. So you might get those post-surgical wins to shorten those benchmarks of people getting back to functionality if they just go in even that much healthier. So that's what we're testing.
Thanks.
Thanks so much, doctors. You actually right are at the buzzer. So hope to hear from you again soon. I really enjoyed your presentation. This seems like a fantastic concept. I appreciate it. And last, but certainly not least, we have young adults as living donors. What do we know about the experience of younger donors, and what do we need to find out? We've got Jed Gross and Dr. Abby joining us. I'm looking to see if I can see you guys on my screen. I got you both. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, the Center for Living Donation in the Ejmer Transplant Center has, with this project, a really unique opportunity to impact the international transplant community with new knowledge. Jed will tell you the backstory.
Clinicians and ethicists have identified some concerns that may be heightened when young adults are interested in living donation. These include decision-making capacity and how it may be affected by experience and neurological development, as well as possible vulnerabilities stemming from family living arrangements. Additionally, when people have a lot of life ahead of them, risks and benefits years into the future may be more impactful. These important insights guide current thinking about donor assessment and support. There's a gap in the literature, though, which is a lack of organized knowledge about what young adult candidates themselves want to know, or wish they had known, or want us to know. The purpose of our project is to leverage UHN's large pool of living donors to gain this knowledge, which can then help transplant programs refine our education and consent practices for young adult donors.
The value of this work will be felt both locally, in terms of really enhancing and ensuring an optimal experience for our youngest donors within the Ejmer Transplant Center, and internationally through the presentation and generation of new knowledge rather than just more opinion that will really address the traditional reluctance to use younger donors and enhance opportunities for them to donate if warranted. How are we going to do this? Well, we'll use REB approved informed consent processes. Standard to UHN, we're going to describe our population of adolescent and young adult donors and their experiences to date. And then the most important part of the study is that we're going to do a qualitative study to really hear their voices and experience. So using the highest standards of qualitative research. One-to-one, semi-structured interviews, either audio or audio-visual recording as per their wishes. And then we'll transcribe them, use standard processes in coding them, with the assistance of NVivo, and we'll have pilot work to have 2 publications submitted by June 22nd, 22, to then support a CIHR in September 2022.
Thank you. And I'm just going to do a quick pan to see which one of our judges wants to ask a question first. And that's cool because I'm going to go right away. I'm just, one of the things, and it's not specific to your project, but I'm going to address this to Mr. Gross. You're a bioethicist. Did I understand that correctly? So how much of this is an ethical problem for us to look at this as a 21-year-old who potentially wants to donate a liver, or part of their liver or a kidney? Is this a real ethical problem that we're seeing in transplantation centers across Canada?
The ethical problem is that we need to know that donors are giving good informed consent and that the benefits of this outweigh the risks. That's not specific to young adults. However, there have been reasons suggested why this population as a group may be more at risk or harder to assess. And what we're hoping to do is gain a better understanding of whether that is right and how we can better serve this group of donors, as well as any gaps or misperceptions that can be tested against the empirical evidence.
Thank you. I think that's a great answer. I'm going to head on over to Dr. Goldberg now.
Oh, you know what? Actually, I'll let Mary go first, and then I'll go if there's still time. I'd be super interested in her perspective.
Thank you. Mary?
I was just really curious as to, even anecdotally, how much of a demand there is for this age group who is interested in donating.
I think Susan can give approximate numbers there of what we're seeing at UHN.
So it's really interesting because, I've had a feeling like there are not a lot, but there may be, 10 or 15 a year. But I was just doing a quick look through our database. We've got over 180 donors. And the really significant issue is that internationally, people just say, no, they shouldn't donate. Their brains are too immature. And often when I clinically have discussions with people, I say, this is a little bit of reverse ageism. People would say to you in other places, you're too young to donate. And people speak very poignantly about how important it is for them to be able to donate, to save a family member, to donate to a friend, we've even seen some young anonymous donors. And so I think it's really important that perspective be out there in the literature and in the world and a variety of different knowledge dissemination activities, because in many areas, people are very reluctant to use younger donors.
Thank you.
Mary, does that address your question?
Yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely.
Dr. Goldberg, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks. So as you know, I'm a pediatric nephrologist and an ethicist here in Winnipeg, and I've actually written on the topic of young people as donors who are still children when they donate, 16, 17-year-olds. So I think that this is an important topic, especially when you're talking about young adults who legally would fall into the potential donor group, but have, as you say, sometimes been turned away for people saying they're too young. But your study group includes mainly young people who've been approved to donate, although you say that you will also include some who may present as potential living donors during your study period. If your hypothesis is that there's some differences in brain development between younger and older donors, are you going to be able to accurately see that with this study design? And shouldn't you also include young people who came forward to donate and were turned away and kind of look at their experiences as well, not just the ones who may present during the study period, but ones who may have presented historically as well?
Completely, Aviva, although, we don't have a hypothesis that
yeah, it's qualitative, yeah.
Qualitative, but also that I don't know necessarily, like Jed and I were laughing in preparing for this. We've seen some people in their 40s who don't have very well developed, decisional systems and frontal parts of the brain.
I think I know some of those people.
You know some of those people. So, so I think part of it is really trying to start with something that's manageable. And, and once I saw that it was like, there are more people than I thought there were, right? That I think to do this initial pilot project, to know kind of what's the story with folks who actually have gone through to donate. And then the CIHR grant would be for a larger study that would allow us to follow up on people who, who didn't donate, people who came forward and didn't pursue the workup, and potentially understanding better those experiences.
I know that's wonderful. And I think there is a need for more qualitative research in this space. So congratulations on putting this proposal forward. I think it's very important.
We do have a couple of questions coming into us from Slido. And this one is from Irena Voronin. I apologize if I didn't say your name correctly, but how would you connect with your target audience? Where would outreach happen to recruit for this study? It's a good question.
It's a great question. So actually, because we're going to be looking at people who have been treated here, and so again, this is a pilot study, so we're going to look at our experience first, but I would hope with a CIHR grant that we could then look across the country at the experience. But that as part of kind of contemporary ethical practices, we do need to get somebody who's been part of the circle of care. So likely the transplant coordinator who knows people, to do the initial reach out to say, hey, are you willing to have Susan or Jed or one of their research people call you? And then if somebody's agreeable to do that, then we would make contact with them, let them know about what we wanted to do. And also we've done a smaller study in anonymous living liver donors. It's very interesting. Some people are quite willing to have their information used for this kind of descriptive piece around, go look at my back records and how things have gone for me, but I don't want to talk to you. And other people are saying, I want to do both. And then there are people who say, I just want to talk to you. So, we'll take all comers in that way.
And then I'm going to follow up here. What do you think that's the biggest barrier to this project, is getting the actual participants?
Oh, no.
And if not, what is?
I don't think that we're going to have any trouble getting participants. I think our barrier may be trying to not have too many of them. Qualitative research is hard because you do these interviews. It's funny, when we did our anonymous living liver donor study, we thought people would talk for maybe 30 minutes. I think the least they talked for was 45, and we had people talk up to 2 hours. And then to do this work, then you need to transcribe it. So, I don't think we're going to be able to necessarily maybe even hear from everybody that wants to tell us their story.
So one of the barriers may just be exclusion then, and that you're not going to get enough. Or you're going to get too much, excuse me.
We're going to get too much for the funding and resources we have to do this, but I also hope we can sort of leverage some other funds. And I really do want to hear from everybody who wants to talk to us.
This sounds like a very important study, and I'm really glad to hear that people are trying to focus in on the long-term impacts for younger people, who I'm going to guess are probably a little bit healthier than others. I really appreciate your pitch and both of you taking the time to speak with us. And this is going to close our pitch portion of today's programming. We've heard from all of the teams, and now we're going to hear the overall impressions. So remember, judges, these are just your overall impressions of the 6 pitches. And I'm going to head over first to Len.
Sorry, I've done
these are just your overall impressions.
Yeah, let me start by saying that these are all great pitches, and clearly they would add value to the transplant community. Our goals collectively are to increase the numbers and to increase the overall success of living donation. And I think all of these check the boxes in one way or another. So I think it's going to be a really tough decision to pick 3 out of 6 here.
I'll say this much: I do not envy all of you judges right now. I tried to keep tabs on my own, and everybody ended up winning. So there you go. I'm going to head on over to Dr. Tsien.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Len. Congratulations to all of the applicants. You have not made our job easy. And I've been actually trying to mark along as I go. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. And people keep switching up and down. So congratulations to everyone on your hard work. It's really impressive. And no matter who wins today, congratulations to everyone. Really great job.
Dr. Goldberg.
Yeah, echoing the words of my fellow dragons, I think this has been an amazing opportunity to see the exciting and innovative work that's really going on. I loved how many of the projects really thought about the patient perspective, the donor perspective in what they were doing, involved donors in their pitches, and also the use of innovative technologies like machine learning and other really cutting edge techniques. The future of living donation in Toronto, in UHN, and Canada is really bright because of all of these exciting pictures that came forward. And I agree, it's going to be difficult to pick the winners out of this really, really excellent group. Thank you for your contributions today.
Dr. Ghanekar.
Yeah, I would just need to echo those comments. I just like to commend all the applications. I thought they were all excellent and exciting, and I really want to commend them for their enthusiasm and in working in this space. I think it's really exciting to see everything that's going on, and I think it's going to be very difficult to decide on only 3 of these for support. But I think everybody is, headed for success in terms of just hearing how much has come along so far. So congratulations to everybody.
And last but certainly not least, Mary Beaucage.
Yeah, I just really appreciate the passion and commitment that everybody has shown in their pitches today. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation that we'll be having shortly.
And that conversation is actually going to be happening right now. So all of our judges are going to head to an in-camera meeting. We'll be back in 5, maybe 6 or 7 minutes with our final results. Thank you, and please stay tuned. And we are back. Now, first, let's welcome our panel and everyone who pitched their project today. I hope you're all here. And we're going to invite our judges panel just to make a few final comments. I'm going to start off with you, Dr. Tsien.
Oh, just again, congratulations to everyone. You did a fantastic job.
Len?
Yes, thank you so much for presenting all of these pitches. As I said before, these are all great pitches. And, you had to pick just 3. It's tough. And I hope all 6 of them have the opportunity to move forward at some point.
Mary?
It was an honor to be able to sit here and listen to the presentations and to be able to participate in judging and helping forward some of these projects. And like Len said, I hope everybody at some point finds a way or means to advance what they're doing. Great work.
Dr. Anand?
Thanks for the opportunity to participate and to listen to all the pitches. Congratulations to everybody on excellent presentations and proposals. And thanks for your energy and enthusiasm for living donation and improving living donation. And congratulations to the winners, but for everybody to keep working in this space is fantastic. So thanks again.
And last but not least, coming to us from Winnipeg, Aviva, the floor is yours.
Thank you again. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. I just was blown away by the passion and the level of science and planning that came to this process. I was really excited to be a part of it, and congratulations to all 6 of the entries. You all really blew us away today.
Thank you. Really some fantastic projects. Now, just a reminder that the 3 winning projects will be awarded $25,000 each. Now, selection is based on the criteria that you can see now on your screen. And I know that the judges had a very difficult time, but there can only be 3 winners. But one of the criteria that we had here is public support. And I'd like to recognize Dr. Bugeja, I am so sorry, and the project patient and health science system outcomes of a 1-day living kidney donor evaluation process, which as of 10 o'clock this morning had received nearly 1,200 views and over 300 likes. Now, popular support counts, but the focus of the project and the team's ability to make a case for their project in their application and during today's live event, well, they also count. And now I have the honor of announcing the winners of this competition, who will each receive $25,000 to further their work. And as you can see on your screen, patient and health system outcomes of a 1-day living kidney donor evaluation process. Also have PROPELLER rehab to prepare living liver donors for enhanced recovery. And the long-term outcomes of living donors for liver transplantation. Congratulations. I'm also now going to turn it over to Dr. Atul Humar, who's the director of the Ajmera Transplant Center, and Aviva Goldberg, who's the board member of the CST, who are the co-sponsors of today's pitch competition, to both say a few words.
Thank you, Cristina. And on behalf of the Ajmera Transplant Center, I just want to congratulate all the participants today. Your pitches were all amazing, and all the projects are certainly worthy of support, and I'm sure we'll all be successful. I also want to thank the judges. You did an amazing job. And I want to thank you, Cristina, for doing such an amazing job of moderating. And finally, I just want to acknowledge the support of the Canadian Society of Transplantation. It's really nice to see the strong support from our Transplant Society for Living Donation. So thank you.
On behalf of the Canadian Society of Transplant, I just want to thank UHN and Paula, Cristina, the judges today for allowing the CST to be part of this amazing initiative and part of Living Donor Week. We're really excited to see the excellent work that's coming out, and we would like to remind everyone that if you're interested more in the work that these scientists and many other people are doing, that you can, it's not too late to be part of the Canadian Society of Transplant Virtual Forum and Fellows Forum, which will be coming up September 22nd to 24th and October 6th to 8th. I also really want to remind people of the other excellent work that we're doing in collaboration with UHN and other partners, including the Canadian Society of Transplantation's Living Donor Circle of Excellence, where programs can be part of a commitment to help living donors who are employees donate more easily, to be part of a program that will cover some expenses related to living donation. And we're really excited that UHN is one of the partners in that project and encourage other programs to be part of that as well. So again, on behalf of the CST, really happy to be part of today's event and looking forward to hearing more.
And I would like to thank all of our panelists, those who submitted questions, and everybody that is watching at home. And finally, we are exceptionally grateful for the generosity of our founding supporters. That's the Astellas Pharma Company and the Kearney and Cahill families. And thank you, of course, to Toronto General and Western Hospital Foundation for their continued support. Now, a reminder that all Living Donation Week events will be archived on the Center for Living Organ Donation's YouTube channel. We encourage you to connect with the center and to continue to share your story, inspire, and give hope to those on the transplant list while celebrating everyone who makes living donation possible. Before you go, I really encourage you to stick around for just a few minutes to watch this inspiring video by Mary Beaucage.
Alain, bonjour, hello. My name is Mary Beaucage. I'm from Nipissing First Nation outside of North Bay, Ontario, and we're here on our traditional territory. You may find yourself in different situations in telling your story. And sometimes you may be talking to different doctors or talking to a peer group that has gone through similar things that you have or have yet to go through what you're going through. So say you're a transplant recipient and you're talking to people who are waiting for a transplant. Telling your story is really important in helping them guide their decisions. A lot of times we think of a certain medium to tell our story, and that freaks us out. There's so many ways to share it, but really I want to focus on art. Their artwork as you know, that sort of therapy to tell their story, and in sort of telling it for themselves, they've gotten to a point where they can share their story with others with the artwork that they've done.